Hey y'all, this is Kim with Creative Escapades. Welcome to my channel and thank you for joining me today. Let's jump right into our video and see what we can create. So today I'm going to be working on a chunky glitter cup, and I've already prepped it with a coral spray paint, and now I am adding my resin. I'm going to do the Epoxy Method on this, and just to show you how much I'm using, which is not very much at all. I mixed up about 5 mils to do this, and I'm just going to take it off of the bottom, which is the top right now of the cup, and I'm going to work it all the way down the sides and until it is nice and smooth, and you can tell where you have the resin, of course, because you can see where it's shiny, but you can also feel when you're moving the resin down the cup how the resin is smooth until you hit a spot where there is no resin that catches your glove. And you just keep working with it until it is coated all the way around. And this is going to be such a very, very thin layer. You don't want lots of it on there because when you put your glitter on, it will just start dripping off, and that's not what you want. So let's go a little bit faster here so that you are not bored with this. Now that I have it completely coated all the way around, I'm just using my torch and going over it, making sure that there's no little bubbles, and it also is kind of just making the epoxy smooth out more. And we're going to start with our chunky glitter. I have both the chunky and the fine. We want the chunky at the bottom, and I'm just sprinkling it around. I think I'm going to have to move my camera though so that you can see better. There we go. And just turn my cup as I'm sprinkling the glitter. Just making sure I get a good coat. And I'm only going to go part way up the cup with the chunky. And make sure I get the bottom. And there will be some areas on the bottom where the because it is chunky, that it won't be a complete coverage. So what I will do with that is, once I get this cleaned up and start with the fine glitter, I will just go over the top of the chunky and allow the fine to fall in there, and it will fill in any gap where there is no glitter. Just keep pouring, sprinkling, get the bottom, and then I start working the way up to the rim of the tumbler. Just keep coating it. What does not stick to the epoxy that's on the cup, you don't need. So we'll save this and dump it back into our cup and continue. And we're just about done. Make sure that I have everywhere covered. And then I put it back on my stand, and I'm just using my hands, and I'm pressing that glitter into the epoxy. And you are going to get some on your gloves. It's okay. The majority of it is going to stay on the cup. Make sure when you're going around the base of the cup that you push that in really good so you don't have any bits of those chunky bits of glitter sticking out, because if you do, you're going to have to do a lot of sanding. And also around the top of the rim of your cup. So it is cured now and dried, and I've got to do the lid as well as put a layer of epoxy on the cup to seal the glitter. I'm going to give you a disclaimer right here. I will never, ever resin the top of a cup like this again. It's just too hard. It entailed so much work. It turned out great in the end, but it did cause me quite a bit more work. And if I buy this type cup again, I will not do anything to the top. I will just leave it the stainless steel and not try to cover it. Maybe even leave a little bit of the stainless steel showing at the bottom of the cup so that it's kind of balanced. But it did turn out well, but it was a lot of work. Actually, the lid was more work than the cup itself. So I have discovered that I much prefer these clear see-through push-on lids. I think they even have some that will screw down into the cup and not over the edges of the cup. That was another problem that I had, was that at the top of this cup where I smoothed my resin up, it caused the lid to mark and mar my resin. So I actually had to do an extra sanding, not because of the chunky glitter, but because of the lid not screwing down securely onto the top. But I did it, and it was lesson learned. So, also I'm going to give you a couple more hints. This is colder weather now, and I have found that when you are working with resin, even though you think that your heat is on and your workroom is a nice temperature, I have found that I needed to bump my temperature up in my workroom. I needed to give my resin a warm bath prior to mixing, and then as I mixed it, I left it in the warm bath. And I'm using Pro Enamel, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And normally it works great, but as the weather has cooled down, I have noticed that if I don't keep it at just a certain temperature, I do have to do a whole lot more work with it. So warm room, warm bath for your resin. Also, I have stopped using popsicle sticks, and I'm using just this silicone brush. I found out that popsicle sticks introduces air into your resin somehow. I don't understand it, but it really does. And I learned some of these lessons the hard way. So maybe if these tricks are something that you want to try, if you're having any issues, you can try them. I'm not saying that my way is the only way. I'm just saying I found that this is working better for me by having the room warmer, keeping my resin warm prior to and during mixing. And I've also started heating up whatever I'm going to pour on, if it's something like a cup or a coaster, something of that nature, that I can actually warm a little bit before I pour the resin on. And it just allows for a smoother, a whole lot less sanding. I'm not having near the air bubbles, and it has really really helped me. So if it helps someone else, then I feel I've done a good job. So we're just going to get this all covered, and I did end up doing 2 coats of resin on this, and of course I did have to sand that at the top because it was marring when I screwed the lid on, and can't have that. So, and at first I had a little bit of difficulty using the silicone brush because I was so used to using my hand. I was able to feel if the resin was on the tumbler or not. But the more I've worked with this brush, the more that it's just an extension of my hand. I can now tell how much pressure I needed to put on the silicone brush and to get it where the resin is smooth and I'm not just wiping it all off or moving it from one end of the cup to the other. So it might take a time or two working with these, but I really have grown to like them. When I did the lid, you can see there's looks like a little part of a straw sticking out. That is actually tape that I've rolled up and put into the hole where the straw goes. And that was to prevent the resin from completely closing over and curing in that hole, and then I would have had to cut it out. It did work really well with that, and when I did the final top coat onto the lid, I let it cure for a little bit and then come back and just warmed up a little bit with my heat gun around where the tape was at, gave the tape a twist and pulled it out, and it gave me a very good seal all the way to the edge of where the inside of the cup is. It does not go on the inside of the cup. It just goes right down to where there's a plastic liner underneath this lid, and it met that plastic liner and it stopped right there. It was perfect. That was the only good thing about the lid. And I did use chunky glitter on the lid as well, and or medium chunk, and it did cause me a little bit of a headache. And this right here was where I made the mistake of adding too much at the top, but I was having issues with the resin pulling away from the edge of the cup, and so I was just adding some more to make sure that I had my coverage, and that was where I went wrong. So I should have pulled it back down away, and instead I was pushing it towards the edge. I just love the way that white chunky glitter has just taken on that gold shimmer look as the light hits it. I think it looks great. And then I also put a decal on this after it was cured, and you'll see that here in a minute. I didn't video putting the decal on, but it was very easy. I just simply found the center of my decal and then worked one edge and then worked the other edge and used my silicone brush to smooth out any bubbles that might be underneath there, and then applied the final coat of epoxy, and it turned out fantabulous. Here it is. I love this tumbler. I think it turned out so pretty. So proud of it, especially that lid. And you can see the chunky glitter in there, but the cup itself is smooth as glass. So I'm very, very pleased with the way it turned out. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please click like and share. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. Ring that bell. You'll get notified when I upload future videos. And comments, questions, leave them below. I love your feedback. I'd like to know what you think about what I'm doing. And I read every one of them, and I try to answer every one of them. So I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope I've helped someone. And I hope to see you in my next creative escapade.